The Bible is a manual that God gave us for life.
Yes, sir.
It's the words of life. And it also tells us that, it shows us God's plan so that we can know what is happening. And from the very beginning to the very end, God lays out what his plan has been for man. Now, it's the solution for our spiritual growth, and it's a solution for our natural growth. This is God's answer. Now, there's two things, and we've talked about this several times. Only two things that's listed in here whereby God's people are destroyed. And in Proverbs 29 and 18 says, where there is no vision. And when you really look at this thing, folks, both of them are really the same thing. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Hey, now in Hosea, we're going to go over and read that in Hosea, the 4th chapter. Hosea, 4th chapter. Where there is no vision, they perish, and they perish for lack of knowledge. So we're going to start at the 6th verse of Hosea, the 4th chapter. And he says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me, seeing that thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children. Now he said, it wasn't because they couldn't have knowledge, it was because they rejected knowledge. And it said, as they were increased, so they sinned against me. Therefore will I change their glory to shame. As they were increased, in other words, as they multiplied and as they spread out among the people who were worshiping other gods and doing other things, the more they increased, the more they left off the knowledge of God. And just before the flood there, it said, as man began to multiply on the face of the earth. Yep. So it looks like as we read this, that the more man multiplies and gets spread out across the world and gets into pagan things, the more they forget who God is and the more that they begin to go their own way. Now, in these last days, folks, things are changing so fast you can't help but see it. And we have immediate access to things that's happening all across the world and in all other religions. You turn the TV on, you can see what's happening in China. So with this and with the explosion of population, we have come to the place to where it's so many people has just become numb, not to the things of God and to what's happening around them. Shame and shock. It's two things that you don't see hardly anything anymore. People just step across folks shot in the street and walk on. We don't have, nothing shocks us anymore. And because that you turn the TV, like I say, turn TV on or go to a movie, you see all sorts of immorality right there. And so nobody's shocked by anything. And nobody's shamed by anything. And so we have gotten away, the churches have gotten away from preaching the word. I saw where somebody posted this week, said about anybody could preach you happy, but the only very, very few that will preach you salvation. Saved anymore. So because we're just in tune to all of this stuff, and we forget of what's happening around us, and we don't see it. And as man increased, and as we look at these things, folks, it is remarkable. The increase of humanity has exploded in these last days. I was reading this week when we studied. It took over 5,000 years for the human population to reach 1 billion people. Over 5,000 years. But in just a little more than 200 years, we have now jumped to 7.2 billion. Over 5,000 to get to 1. But now we're at 7.2 in just a little over 200 years. And in the rebellion, like I said, we've got the mass media. We've got satellites up there that can just show you things that's happening across the ocean immediately. And in our increase, we have forgot what the Bible said, and we have just compromised on so much till it's hard to find anybody. Just walking around in the street talking to them, it's hard to find anybody that actually talks like they'll tell you they believe Jesus, but it's once in a while you'll find somebody on fire, but it's few and far between when you compare it to what it used to be. It's hard to find anybody that really can tell you why they believe what they believe. It's because we've got away from the book and got too much into what we hear on TV or what somebody said. We were teaching. I spent a while back now, and we brought something up, and the guy in the study started asking questions. He said, "I thought it was this way." I said, "No, that's what the Bible said." He said, "Oh, I saw that in the movie." So what he was thinking was what he saw in the movie instead of what the Bible said. So his understanding came from what he saw in a movie. But folks, we need to get back to what God's Word said if we're going to know. Now, God has always had one plan. And the devil's always had one plan. And the devil's chief, the way he does things, his number one thing is to mimic God's plan so he can fool the simple. He makes things look like God's doing it. And so people who does not know the Word, does not get in the Word, does not study, does not pray, does not seek wisdom, hey, it looks good. And so he fools people. But God's plan from the very beginning, folks, and when you say the plan, things that's happening around you begin to make sense. Yes, sir. But from the very beginning, he created this creation for man, and he wanted man to fill up creation with his seed that looked like God, that acted like God, that talked like God. He made us in the image and likeness of God. Now, in Genesis 1:28, it tells us, how that God blessed man, and he told him to have dominion and to multiply. Now, he didn't start off with a lot of commands because man had been made in God's image and God's likeness, and he just said multiply. Fill up the earth with your offspring that is going to carry my image to all creation. Of course, sin came along. Now, let's just read Genesis 2:17. The two commands, one was fill it up, and the other one was don't touch that tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And Genesis 2:17 says, but the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eat thereof, thou shalt surely die. Now, God gave that command to fill up the world before sin came. But when sin came, God's plan didn't change. He sent Christ to make sure it would work. And God's plan is still going to work. There's going to come a day beyond the millennium where the earth will be filled with the seed of God. Righteousness of God in man walking here on earth, just the way God intended it. But right now, the devil, hey, that's one world government, folks. God's plan was for a one world government with God in control, with man walking in life and not death. Now, God knew that sin was going to change everything, but again, God sent Christ to put it back so that in the end it would ultimately be what he had planned to start with. In Genesis 10, and let me tell you this, as soon as the devil fell, he began to try to offer man another alternative, and it began to tell man that he could do what God had said without God. He could make one world government without God. And I want you to understand that is being the goal from the very beginning, and over and over and over and over, we have saw men try to do that. Hitler's plan was to conquer the world and him be emperor. Stalin, Napoleon, Alexander the Great. All these men through history had that same idea. Is we are going to conquer the world, and we're going to control the world, and we're going to bring peace and harmony in the end. But now, see, it started back. We see the first start of it here. Of course, man started his rebellion when he first sinned, but this one world government thing, and look at Genesis 10. And we'll start at the 8th verse. It says, "And Cush began Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one in the earth. And he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Asidia, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. Now Nimrod began to build an empire with him as the ruler. He was a mighty man of the earth. And if you begin to study the origin of paganism, you'll trace it all the way back to Nimrod. This was the start of man's idea that he's going to do what God said, except without God. He's going to build a one world order under man, not God. So this thing has been on the move since thousands of years ago. And like I said, a lot of people tried it. Only until now. See, we didn't have the means to move armies quickly back in the days of Hitler, and back in the days of Alexander the Great and all these people. They had, further back, they didn't have any way to communicate. The Roman Empire took over about the whole known world, not all of it, but they took a bunch of it. But they couldn't hold it together because they had no means of instant communication or moving the armies. It's only in today is the only time that we've had that we can know what's happening everywhere. We've got methods to control everywhere at one time, and the methods is already there. Now in Genesis 2 and 7, I got you wrong. Genesis 11. Let's look at this. This talks about Babel. It says, "And the whole earth was one language and of one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar." That's over where Nimrod is. "And they said one to another, Go and let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and slime they had for mortar. And they said, Go to, let us build a city and a tower whose top may reach into heaven. And let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the earth." Now what they're saying, let's make our own way to heaven. Let's do it our way. Let's get together. If we can just get together, we can build our own. You ever heard that? Just get together, we can build our own way to heaven. We don't need God. And that's the thing that's been sought after from the very beginning. But today, the globalists see it within reach. And when you understand that we are working according to a planned agenda, and they try to dismiss this thing, and somebody brings it up and say, "Oh, it's a conspiracy theory." But folks, when you can pull it up and read it on your computer, when you can see the plan, they ain't trying to hide it. They're trying to keep people from looking. They are trying, on one hand, they say it's divine destiny, that the globe be at peace, that everybody be happy, and that the poverty is destroyed. Divine destiny, but they deny God. The whole thing is man is his own savior. We are our own savior. That's what this whole thing is about global warming. It's about control, but hey, the only way we can do it is get man together. Because if you can scare folks into believing what you're saying must be done or we're all going to die, then you can get folks to line up. And so step by step we are coming into a globalization, but the Bible has laid it out. Now, a few years ago, the UN came up with this thing, and it was called the Earth Charter. And there was about 6,000 different organizations and governments that signed on to this thing. It was back in, I believe it's in 1998. And the Earth Charter, the goal was again to bring all the nations under a kind of global umbrella to save the planet, to do away with poverty. It sounds good. To do away with poverty, to save the planet, bring everybody onto a level playing field. In other words, to spread the wealth to everywhere. Now, they revised that thing in 2000, and they called it the Agenda 21. And jot this down and look it up. You can find it on your computer, and you can read these things, and we need to know it. Because we're seeing now the globalization beginning to happen, and it's happening suddenly. And we understand in this globalization, the Antichrist is going to rise to rule. And it's not something that's coming, it's something that's here. Now we had this Agenda 21, which said that everything that they had laid out to bring in a one world government, they was going to have it implemented by the end of the 21st century. But things changed again. And do you remember back in September when the Pope was in, first Pope that ever went and spoke to the United Nations? And the president went and spoke. And they signed a new agenda with 193 nations of the UN. And now Agenda 21 is Agenda 2030. And now they say we will implement this in the next 15 years. And if you'll read Agenda 2030 and how good it sounds, but then you realize what they're doing to the, when you lay the Bible down beside it and you see what they're doing, folks, you understand that the elite, the leaders of the world is saying within 15 years we're going to have global governance and we're going to control everything. It's 2015, folks. To get it done by 2030, we have to, that's got some drastic things that's got to start happening and happening quickly. And it's going to, the warnings is over. The blood moons is through. Yes. Now we begin. But they've signed this. One of the things on it, and again, we was just talking about a while ago, changing, making everything gender friendly, the bathrooms here, One of the things on there was gender equality. You can't have the separation of the sexes. Everything has got to be a oneness. See, they didn't just get up one morning and start saying, let's quit calling them little boys and little girls and let's just start calling them children. They didn't just get up one morning and start saying, hey, let little Johnny wear his dress. That's good for him. Yeah. It's all a part of an agenda. They are creating zombies. And hey, you'd have to be a zombie to follow the Antichrist. Because you got to be sold out entirely. Now, and one of the commandments in this agenda is that the world must deal with intolerant righteousness. Intolerant righteousness. In other words, has making everything on a playing field. All religion must be equal. But the thing about that is, the reason that the war is against Christianity is because true Christianity is the only thing that cannot compromise and still be true. And so they go along, they are favoring Islam. You ever wonder why that we're bringing in all these Islamic peoples into the Western countries that are hurting, that can't even feed their own people? It's bringing everything, the nations that has been, the rich nations are now intentionally. You can't make all nations rich, but you can make all nations equal. And so this whole thing is to bring everybody down under a one government and let the government control it. Now, the main religion is, of course, the Green Movement is to take. See, we must get together to save the planet. That's the main thing that they push, because if we all are on this planet, we've got to save the planet or we're all going to die. And so those at the top, in the top echelon, folks, is trying to convince the world that they can lead us out. And it's funded, well funded, folks, and it's going step by step. Now, you know, the Islam nations, even though they've got a rigid religion, they can be kept down in poverty because they're really back in the 6th century already. Only the top echelon has got the wealth. The folks like you and I in most of the Islamic countries doesn't have near as much as you have. So they can be held, you know, under kind of control on that evidence. And two, Islam does not mind killing people. And we're going to get to that too. All of this, folks, is here, written out, laid out. It is a plan. And folks will say, oh, like again, that's a conspiracy theory. No, look at it. It's happening, and it's biblical that it will happen. Now, it's right here in our back door, and it's not talked about. But in 1980, and it was a false name, a man showed up over in Elbert County, Georgia. And he paid this marble company a lot of money to make these huge marble stones. And a lot of folks call it the American Stonehenge. He's got it precisely. Everything's precisely set where the sun will, at a time of day, will hit a certain place on these marbles and light it up. But these huge marble stones, they're about 20 foot high, 19, 20 foot high. And they're kept. They've been there since the 80s. And these stones are called the Georgia Guidelines. And they were set up again. It's a plan for a one world order. And he has wrote the 10 Commandments on them. And the proclaimed goal is to be followed. These commandments are to be followed into the age of reasoning. And do you understand that the globalist says that you're not reasonable if you really believe God is God and not man? So this is set up to lead us into an age of reason. Now, these 10 Commandments is wrote in 8 modern languages and 6 ancient languages, all on these great marble stones. And one of these days, I'm going to break down and go over and look at them. But they've been there since 1980, and every once in a while, they'll come in and add a little something. Nobody knows really who's backing it, but hey, you can't put up this many marble stones without having some money, and you can't keep them up without having some money. So it's funded. But it is, again, to lead man into the age of reasoning. And the first commandment on these things for a one world order is to keep humanity under 500 million. Now think about that. We must have humanity under 500 million. It's 7.2 billion. It was well over 500 million in 1980 when these stones arrived. So in the mind of the globalist, humanity must be reduced. And you see this idiocy stuff in plain view. They're not hiding it. Ever wonder why abortion is so popular? It reduces humanity. Ever wondered why now homosexual marriage is pushed more than straight marriage? It reduces humanity. We must have it under 500 million. And is this Bible? We're going to get into that in just a minute. We're not just talking. We're going to get into that. But when you realize that the people in power that believes this stuff, their goal is to reduce humanity under 500 million. I may have said 1,000, 500 million. To reduce it under 500 million. The goal. And when you understand that, then you understand why we want to kill the babies. You understand why Islam is sending their own children out to be killed and to kill others. Because it's all part of that man. Look, it all comes from the same spirit. There's just two spirits working in the world, folks, and that's the spirit of Satan, which is Antichrist, and the spirit of God. Now, it's all being proclaimed right now. And everybody thinks, well, you know, this is our great idea. This is what we can do this because we are we are gods. But I want you to look at Zephaniah 3 and 8. The prophet Zephaniah, I love it. Everything the devil's got planned, God tells on him. I had Zephaniah in my Bible when I left home. Zephaniah 3 and 8. When you get there, holler, I want you to see this. Oh, yeah, see, this thing's not hid, folks. It's just hid to most folks because we don't take time to look. Yeah. Zephaniah 3 and 8 says this. Therefore wait ye upon me, saith the Lord, that's harvest, until the day that I rise up to the prey, for my determination is to gather the nations. Do you see this? My determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdoms, to pour out mine indignation, even my fierce anger, for all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. He said, because they've rejected me, he said, it's my idea. Now, man thinks it's his. And the devil is trying to make a one-world government, a global rule. God uses what man sows to bring harvest. God said, hey, okay, we're going to just let them. Just go ahead, gather. But I will pour out my judgment on them. Now, the more we get away from God, the more all of man's plan seems good. And the more we get away from God, the closer we come to the judgment. Now, under this plan that started out with for the 21st century, now 2030, the playing field for everybody must be made level. Wealth must be spread. It's all here, folks. Wealth must be spread. Food must be spread. Water must be spread. No gender inequality. Now, when you think about all the little countries that doesn't have water to supply, we begin to understand why just this year the EPA said we are now controlling all the water in America, even mud holes. Do you know in places in America right now they're arresting people for catching rainwater? All the water belongs to the government. Soon all the food sources, well, it already does. Really. All the food sources. And this whole plan is to bring everybody into a level playing field. So those that don't play will have just as much as those that are playing. You ever heard this working in America? Spread the wealth. Well, it's just fair. No, it's just a global governance. A global government, I mean, this is what universal health care was all about. It was more about control than it was about health care. Now, if you look over in Revelation 6, as the judgments begin to be released. Now, this is the time when the Antichrist will have come. And so what we're seeing and happening right now, is lining up for the fulfillment of all things. But what we need to know is the governments of the world are pushing to have this done within 15 years. I don't think we got 15 years. I'd be surprised if we got more than 2. But, or maybe not that many. But they are saying, we've got to get this set up by 2030. Now, Revelation 6, where we see the judgments being opened under Antichrist, verse 5 says this. And when he had opened the third seal, and remember, this is written symbolically to show you what will be happening. When he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, Come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the fourth beast saying, A measure of wheat for a penny, 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see that thou hurt not the oil and the wine. Does anybody know what balances does? It weighs out equally, doesn't it? So he's saying the time is coming. This is a judgment when food will be balanced out and rationed. Now, when you see that a penny, a measure of wheat for a penny and a measure of barley for a penny, in those days, a penny was a day's work, a day's wages. He said, we'll measure this thing out. The price will be astronomical, but it'll be level across the board. And where you see it says, and hurt not the oil and wine, these were, the oil and wine in those days were things that showed wealth. If you had a lot of oil and you had wine, a lot of wine, you were wealthy. So what it's saying here is there will be a top echelon that will not be touched. It'll be a one world government that will have been gathered the wealth and will distribute it equally. It will be distributed equally. In other words, it doesn't matter if you grow your food and you have, several hundred pounds of food put up, the government will come and take that and distribute it among the others. And I'm going to tell you something, folks. When out of the heart, we were called to give. And when you give out of your heart to charity, that is what it is. It's charity. When the government takes it, it's thieving. Yes. It's robbery. But this is what we're seeing. And see, John saw this happening in his days, and we are walking into it right now. Now, everything has been happening for the last few years pretty quick, but we can expect an acceleration of all these things because it has to happen according to their own agenda. They're trying to push it for the next 15 years. Now, look at verse 8. And we'll come back to this in just a minute, but I want to touch it a little while right here. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him, and the power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth to kill them with the sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beast of the earth. Do you see a fourth part? Do you see all these folks dying? Over in chapter 9 and verse 18, you'll see a bunch more folks dying. What's happening? Why's all these folks dying? It's bringing the population down to 500 million. It's already been wrote as a goal, folks. It's a goal. And again, right now, every time, they kill babies and laugh about it. Conscience has been seared. And this generation right now, and see what we've done, we've told our children that there is no God. We've got a generation coming up that has been taught that there is no God, and whatever you think is what's right. And the generation that is living now, that is in that childbearing age, they have control over the generation that's coming. They can kill them if they want to. And they have control over the older generation who can no longer work. They can kill them if they want to. I'm not trying to scare you folks. I'm telling you it's coming. We better be ready to get out of here before it starts happening. Amen. But it's already beginning to build. And when you lose the sacredness of human life, you have lost everything. Nothing else matters. Because if you don't have any conscience about killing the baby, you won't have any conscience about killing anything in your way. All these folks are dying. Now, I want you to look over at Revelation 16. Bringing the world under 500 100 million. Wars do that too, folks. It does away with population. Could I tell you something else? So does manufactured diseases. John wrote in Revelation 16, and I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, that's the devil, and out of the mouth of the beast, Antichrist, and out of the mouth of the false prophets. For they are the spirits of devils working miracles which go forth into the kings of the earth and of the whole world to give them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. He said spirits would begin to be released that would convince the rulers of the whole world. We just read where in Zephaniah where he said, hey, it's my determination. I'm going to gather them together to pour out my wrath. It says the spirits will be released to gain together in the whole world under this plan to come against the coming Christ. That's what we call Armageddon, folks. And it's coming. Yes. Now, nowhere in this plan does it say that they're going to do away with all these countries. No, there's still going to be a Russia and a China and a Japan, and all these nations will be there. But they will be under one set of global rules, and everything will be brought forth under a global court. See? I mean, in other words, the United States will be the United States. But our rules will be handed to us through this global unity that's coming, and anything that, hey, it's already happening. Do you understand that we signed a gun bill with the UN that can control our guns in the coming future? The UN, which is part of this whole thing. Now, let's go back to Revelation for just a minute to look at that 4th seal again. 6. We're in Revelation now. Back to Revelation 6. I'm sorry. Y'all pay attention to me now, because I'll have to get off if you don't. A pale horse. If you look that word pale up in the Greek, it says a green horse. 8. We read that, but I want to just look at it a little closer. A green horse. We call it the green movement. And his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him, and the power was given to them over the 4th part of the earth to kill with the sword, with hunger, with death, and with the beasts of the earth. The green movement. Now, the green movement, again, is to, let's just save the planet. But at the heart of this thing, see, is this level playing field. And he said it's going to kill them with the beast of the earth. And some of this sounds so far-fetched that logical people say, well, it can't happen until you begin to look, and it is happening. Do you understand? We have a push going on now. We've got an organization that's pushing this thing to give animals the same rights as humans. We've got a lawsuit going on, I think they finally settled it, but it was going on in Brookwood, New York, I believe it was. This university had 2 chimpanzees, and they were studying them, their movements. This group sued them for illegally detaining 2 chimpanzees. Illegally detaining them. And you can look this up it's on the computers. They want to give animals the same rights as humans, put us all on one scale. Do you understand it's against the law to eat a human? Under the New World Order, it'd be against the law to eat the animal. Now we see why that people are dying from the beast of the earth. If you cannot manage the animals will manage you, because you can't grow a garden, you can't grow fields, because they'll eat them up. And already in places where they're multiplying faster than hunters can get, they come into the populated areas. That's just what they do. The Bible said they'd be killed with the beast of the earth. Paul declared this thing over in Romans 1, I believe, Romans 1 or 2. And he said that they would change the glory of the incorruptible God into an image like corruptible man and 4-footed beast and creeping things. In other words, make God out of creation. God is creation. God is the globe. God is the earth. Mother Earth, you ever heard of that? See? And this whole thing, folks, is what, when you understand what the agenda is, you can see why things are happening. See, when we look and we see Germany taking in all these thousands of refugees, and Germany is hey, folks, it's just like America. It's suffering financially too. So why are they bringing in all these refugees? Because we can't make the whole world, we can't bring them up to Western level. We've got to bring the world down to their level. And then the time will come when everything will be rationed. Population control. And the main idea is sacrifice so that some can live. See, when you do away with God and His principles, you got to work it out, because there's nothing left. And man could never work it out. And the rapture is the only thing that's going to take the church out of this madness just before it really starts in full. It's already happening. Jesus in Matthew 24, 11 and 12 talked about, now he's talking to the Jewish nation, but again, it to the church kind of as proxy, because we're here as this thing's building up. And he said, for many false prophets shall rise and deceive many, and because iniquity abounds, the love of many shall wax cold. He said because people are looking at all these things and it looks good, they will begin to walk away from the truth and embrace the lie. And we've said it around here a bunch of times. When the Antichrist gets here with the number to place on everybody so that you can have the necessary things. For years, we kind of thought about it. It'll just be kind of a forced thing, you know, and they'll be going door to door making sure you got it. No, there will be folks lined up for miles to get it. Yes. The mark. Because they will already have been talked into believing that this is the only way to live. And see, again, that the base of this thing is man is his own Savior. You ever heard of a number 666? That's the number of the beast. The number of man, 6. What that's simply saying, you know, you're a creature that is body, soul, and spirit. You're a 3-part creature, made in the image and likeness of God, which is a 3-part Godhead. Under the Antichrist, this number 666 is all man. Body, soul, spirit. 666. Everything will be pointing to man. We can do it. We can build our own way to heaven without God. It's not that it hadn't been tried before. It's just they didn't have the capabilities of bringing it about. And see, we see this thing already working in the churches, because there will be a end-time false church gathered together, just like there'll be an end-time false government gathered together. Saw just this week where the First Baptist Church in America, I forgot where it was at, but they said it was the First Baptist Church. They have accepted homosexual pastors. They're going to ordain them, and they're going to go along with homosexual marriages. First Baptist Church in America to do this. But we've had several others that's been doing it for a while. See, it's all fitting into an agenda that folks that is supposed to be carrying the word hadn't saw. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Now, again, embracing the homosexual lifestyle is another form of population control. So some friends of mine, used to be friends of mine years ago, called the Lewises, came out with a song a couple of years back, and it's talking about all of this. And it said, 2 happy ganders will never make a goose. Wow. A line in there. And folks, so the homosexual lifestyle is not going to populate the earth. No. It's bringing down the population. Now, and again, we've just raised our debt ceiling. The Bible tells us about a financial crash where the gold and silver won't matter. It won't save us in the last time. Again, the financial system will go down so that the world financial system can be in control. And and it's going to happen. Now, the Antichrist says that, the wealth will be distributed. The Antichrist says this according to Isaiah. Isaiah said, he will say, I have removed the borders of the people. I have robbed their treasures, and I've gathered the whole earth. If you believe John 3:16, you got to believe this too. Amen. And if you believe this too, and you see what the Bible's saying, and you look at your news, you can see it happening, and it's happening now. And again, you can turn your TV on just about every day. I see it at least once, sometimes more than once. If you want to be secure, buy gold and silver. Anybody ever see that? Stock up on gold and silver. But Isaiah said your silver and gold wouldn't save you. See, we're still looking for the things that man can do to save himself. When this thing comes in around, folks, the only salvation that man's going to be able to see is this one world government. And if you don't think folks is trusting in the government, even now, look who they elect, trusting in a government. But there is a government coming, and we must get this word. See, when you look in the Bible and see what God said for us to be doing, and let's be doing it. Look in the Bible and see what God said the Antichrist, the spirit of the Antichrist is going to be doing, and see if you can see it. Know where we're at. See, they're planning on by 2030. They're planning on the next 15 years. How long are we planning on? Let's plan on it what God set forth. Amen. What God set forth. He has set forth a time, and we're in it. Yes, sir. And we're in it. And we must get ready and stay ready. And folks don't like this kind of stuff. But those who does not see it will not be ready for it. And again, more and more and more churches are teaching there will be no rapture. Yeah. You know what that's all about? It's to leave you here in all of this. But you can leave if you want to. Jesus said we could. Yes, sir. He's got the last word, and I'm with him.